Sovete discipuli, amici comites et alis, hodie discemus de declinationibus, declinatio prima, secunda et tertia, in omnibus casibus. So we're going to learn about the first three declensions in all cases. Let's just do a quick run through of what each of the cases does. Our nominative is generally our subject of the sentence. Our vocatives are if we call something. So if I call you, I would use your vocative form. Our accusatives are usually the direct object of the sentence, or with certain prepositions. Our genitives show possession or limiting in some way. Our datives have the indirect object or go with certain verbs. And our ablatives are used most often with prepositions, but also for separation. So let's begin with first declension, which is known as the A declension, in which most of the words, bar a few, are feminine. So our nominative, we'll use puella, puel a, the girl, puella, girl, puellam, puelai, puelai, puella. So that long A, if you're given the long A, shows you that rather than a nominative you have an ablative here. Plural, puelai, vocative, puelai, accusative, puellas, genitive, puellarum, dative, puellis, ablative, puellis. So, aam, I-as, autumn isis. Aam, I-as, autumn isis. Aam, I-as, autumn isis. It flows fairly well. Please note this is the British way of putting cases. In the United States, the order is slightly different, and so the way that you would memorize the cases is also different. Now we're going to move on to the second declension, and we'll do two separate slides. For masculine, we will use puer first. So our nominative can be either us or Since we're using puer, it's So puer, puer, puerum, pueri, puero, puero, pueri, pueri, pueros, puerorum, pueris, pueris. So if you look at the vocative, you'll see that there are three possibilities for the vocative. If you have a word in the second declension that ends in us, such as dominus, you'll use the E. So if I want to say, hey master, what's up? I would say domine. For a word like puer that ends in er, or ager, if you wanted to talk to your field for some reason, I would say puer, boy, ager, hey field. But if you have a second declension noun that ends in ius, then your vocative is going to be an I ending. And this was made quite clear to me by my teacher, Georgius, George, who, when we spoke to him in the vocative, was always Georgi, Georgi. So if you can remember Georgius, hopefully you can remember that ius nouns in the second declension do have that I for their vocative. So we'll move on to the second declension, neuter, and we'll use frumentum frumenti, because I like the vocative for this. So our nominative singular is Our vocative singular is not E like the masculine, but rather like the nominative. Our accusative singular is Our genitive singular is E. Our dative singular is O, and our ablative singular is O. When we go to the plural, this is where it's very, very different from the masculine, because our nominative plural, frumenta, our vocative plural, frumenta, and our accusative plural, frumenta. Genitive plural, frumentorum, dative plural, frumentis, ablative plural, frumentis. Generally, you don't run through this the same way you run through the other endings for the second and first declension, because this is always very similar. Neuter endings are always very similar to the masculine endings in their respective declensions, except for nominative and accusative, singular, and plural. Your nominative plural for your neuter nouns are always going to end in A. That is a hard and fast rule. Your nominative and accusative plural and your vocative plural for neuter nouns are always going to end in A. Something else of note is that your nominative and accusative in every declension, if the word is neuter, will always be the same. So your singular nominative will look identical to your singular accusative, and your plural nominative will look identical to your plural accusative. That's all 5 cases, all 5 declensions. So now we'll take a look at the third declension, and what's very different about the third declension is that the nominative endings can be several different letters. I remember them as ailkanosterix. However, it's not really important to know which letters they are. What's important to know is that it's something that is not the same every time. So we put a star there. And you'll know, based on its dictionary definition, what the stem of the word is by looking at the genitive. So we're given rex, regis. Our genitive ending is is. So you take away the is from the second part of the dictionary definition, and that is your stem. So reg is our stem. And you use your stem for every form other than nominative and vocative singular. So for nominative and vocative singular, we have rex and rex. Then we have regem, regis, regi, rege, reges, 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 regum, regibus, regibus. So if you want to chant your declension endings, a way to do it is to remember the star at the beginning and just make it an S. And so you can say semisiae esse sumibusibus. Semisiae esse sumibusibus. And if you want to make sure you remember that's both nominative and vocative at the beginning, you can make your S a bit longer and say semisiae esse sumibusibus. So which endings are the same that you might get confused with when you see them while you're translating? If you see an AE, I, at the end of a word, then it could be first declension dative singular, it could be first declension genitive singular, nominative plural, or vocative plural. So when you see AE, it might mean to the girl, of the girl, or belong to the girl, the girls as a subject, or girls, calling out the girls as the vocative plural. Those are your possibilities for AE. For IS, you could either have, in the first and second declension, the dative or ablative plural, or you could have a third declension genitive singular. That's why it's important for you to know what declension each of your nouns is in as you learn them. With ibus, it's third declension ablative or dative plural, and that you need to figure out by context. With ace, it could be third declension, nominative and accusative, and vocative plural. Again, context. Look for another subject to the sentence. If you have no other subject to the sentence, and that has to be your object, it's probably your object. Now I can be second declension genitive singular, or second declension nominative plural, or second declension vocative plural. But it can also be third declension dative singular, regi, to the king. And sometimes it can also be third declension ablative, especially with adjectives. We'll learn more about third declension nouns and adjectives that have that I ablative later. O can be second declension, dative, or ablative singular. Thank you.